I spent $200,000. Kenny, who didn't even attend my mother's funeral, had unexpectedly flown abroad.
$200,000? What on earth did you do with such a sum?
You remember that grand piano we had at home? I sold it. Man, coming from a wealthy family sure had its perks. That was a fine piano. I never imagined it would fetch $200,000. It seems Kenny mistakenly thought that the grand piano at home was his. My condolences. The inheritance rights to the family estate are all mine. However, that piano was originally bought by our grandfather for my brother, and it still belongs to him. My brother, who's always loved the piano and now works as a piano teacher, left it at our family home because it was too big for his house. Given my brother's strong sense of ownership, he would be furious to know that something of his had been sold without his consent. Knowing my brother, simply compensating him won't be enough. When I told Kenny this, he hung up immediately. My name is Rachel Schneider. I'm a 45-year-old office worker. My family has a distinguished lineage that dates back to colonial times and is well known in our community. Moreover, thanks to my late father's successful business, we now own assets worth $9 million. Originally, my older brother was supposed to inherit the family estate. However, he had a girlfriend from a family that also required an heir. Desiring to marry her at all costs, he declared that he would give up all inheritance rights in exchange for not taking over the family responsibilities. This left me with the challenge of needing to find a spouse to continue the family name. Even though I had always wanted to be independent without relying on family wealth, I focused solely on my career. Before I realized, I found myself in my mid-40s and still single. I needed to find someone, or our family line would end with me. So, I took a leap of faith and attended a singles mixer. That's where I met my current husband. His name is Kenny, and he's surprisingly 10 years younger than me. Yet, at the party, he didn't pay attention to any of the younger women and came straight to me. "You sure you want to be with someone as old as me?" I asked him repeatedly, but Kenny looked straight into my eyes and answered, "I'm a bit shy and not very assertive. I've always been drawn to older, more grounded women." True to his words, Kenny gave off a gentle, reserved vibe. I felt that he could bring some peace to my assertive family dynamics. As our relationship progressed, there was something I had to tell him. My mother had been bedridden due to illness since last year, and I was taking turns with my sister-in-law, Catherine, to care for her. Wondering how to break the news since we were considering marriage given our age, I finally told him on our third date. He gladly accepted and even proposed to me, saying he'd like to help with the caregiving. I was deeply touched by his kindness. At least, that's how I felt in the beginning. Kenny works as a daycare teacher. However, 4 months into our marriage, he suddenly wanted to quit his job. When I asked why, he replied with a remorseful look. "Sorry, Rachel. The parents at my daycare are just too demanding and complaining a lot. I just can't handle it anymore." Surely, it must have been tough for Kenny, looking so timid. I would have normally said, "Try a little harder," to encourage him, but with him helping with my mom's care now, I couldn't say a word. Plus, I'm 3 months pregnant now. I want to get along well with Kenny for the sake of the baby on the way. I was showing a lenient face, but I soon regretted it. As I came out of the shower and tried to enter the bedroom, I could hear Kenny whispering on the phone. I was shocked at the content of his call. I managed to get married without her finding out I'm unemployed. She totally believed me when I just told her I quit my job. When in reality, I quit like 2 years ago. It sounded like he was talking to one of his buddies. From the other end, I faintly heard a male voice say, "Man, you're really something." Well, Rachel's family is pretty wealthy around here. I thought I hit the jackpot when I saw her at that dating event. But then again, given her age, I was probably the only one to approach her. I felt deceived. Was the gentle Kenny I knew all just an act? I wanted to confront him immediately, but thinking of the baby, I couldn't utter a word. Knowing Kenny's true intentions, I lost confidence in our future. Today, Catherine will be taking care of my mom until 5 p.m., and then I'll take over. I was pondering whether I should confide in someone about Kenny. That's when my brother's wife, Catherine, spoke to me. "Rachel, you look down. If something's troubling you, please share it with me." She's such a kind person. Having taken care of her own mom for years, she's really good with mine too. I opened up to her about Kenny. She listened intently to my story.
It's good you talked. Keeping this to yourself could have been harmful to your unborn child.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
No worries. Talking doesn't necessarily solve everything, but it surely lightens the load. Still, this is quite the situation.
Catherine looked really concerned, almost as if it was her own problem. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, and without waiting for a response, Kenny entered. Both of us were taken aback, but Kenny acted like nothing was amiss and smiled.
"Rachel, I'm gonna help with your mom's care from today. You're not in the safe period yet, so I don't want you straining yourself."
Kenny was putting on the act of a gentleman in front of me.
"Really? Okay, let me show you how to care for her."
"No, I'll learn from Catherine. You just rest at home." "Well, my brother's coming home early today, so we won't need her help." Upon hearing that, Catherine looked at me, shaking her head as if to say it's okay. She might confront Kenny and get the full story out of him once I'm gone. Thinking that, I decided to leave it to her and head home. But I couldn't help but worry, so I pretended to leave but hid nearby. Catherine tried to start a conversation with Kenny, but he spoke first. "I've been meaning to ask. Why are you taking care of your mother-in-law in this house?" He was using the same tone he used on the phone. "Well, my husband's busy and can't make it, and Rachel has her job. But more importantly, why are you asking?" Then, Kenny exclaimed, "What?" and began to say horrible things to Catherine.
"You live in such a wealthy home, you'd have enough money to put your mother-in-law in a care facility, wouldn't you? Or is it something else? Did your husband give up his claim to this family's wealth, so you're trying to curry favor by taking care of her? That must be it. You'd be pretty upset if you married into money and didn't get a piece of the inheritance, wouldn't you? That's just cruel."
I too was so angered by Kenny's harsh words that I wanted to leave the room. However, as I was about to, Catherine, noticing me, signaled with her eyes not to. I reluctantly stayed quiet and just watched the scene unfold.
"You hit a nerve, didn't you? If so, leave right now. This family's wealth belongs to us, my wife and me. So, I'll take care of my mother-in-law by myself from now on."
With that attitude from Kenny, Catherine felt it was pointless to say anything more and left the scene. I also discreetly stepped outside. She must have been deeply hurt. I wondered how I could apologize to her. Then, Kenny began taking care of Mom all by himself. I offered to help, but Kenny told me I absolutely shouldn't come. He just explained the basics of caregiving. However, his careless caregiving had tragic consequences, and our mother passed away. The funeral was held at a church where generations of our family had been buried. However, from the day Mom passed away, Kenny disappeared. I tried to figure out where he might have gone, but with funeral preparations and other arrangements, I was too occupied. Relatives and neighbors seemed puzzled by Kenny's absence. Catherine, crying in front of the altar, apologized for entrusting Kenny with the caregiving. I approached the distraught Catherine and tried to console her.
"Catherine, please don't be so hard on yourself. It's our fault, not yours."
"No, Rachel, it's not your fault."
"But where on earth is that man? I wanted to give him a piece of my mind today, and he vanishes just as Mom passes away."
"Exactly.
And wasn't Kenny often out even while he was supposed to be caring for Mom? Where was he going?"
Yes, according to neighbors, Kenny frequently left the house. He was out so often it didn't seem like he was caregiving at all, more like he was just bumming around. Also, they mentioned a large truck had come by once. What was that truck about? I was curious, but with the funeral going on, I didn't bring it up to anyone. The funeral ended, and even after 3 days, Kenny hadn't returned. Then, I got a call on my cell from Kenny. "Hey, Rachel? I'm currently at a luxury hotel in Europe, the kind I saw on a travel show." Kenny's carefree voice came through.
"What? Kenny, you skip Mom's funeral and you're doing what now?"
As I angrily yelled, an unexpected answer came from Kenny. "I spent $200,000.
$200,000? Where'd you get that kind of money?"
Remember the grand piano at our family home? I sold it. Man, it was a good one. Who would have thought it'd go for $200,000? Turns out, Kenny had sold the family's grand piano and was using that money to travel around Europe. That piano, which Mom said was a family heirloom, was indeed worth around $200,000. Apparently, the hotels Kenny booked were all quite luxurious, and he had quickly spent all the money. I never dreamt Kenny would do something like this while supposed to be taking care of Mom. Our family home had tight security, but with family, it's a different story. The truck that had been at our home must have been there to transport the piano.
Why on earth are you doing something so selfish? The whole family was worried about you since you weren't at the funeral. Well, you know, when you have a kid, you won't have much free time anymore. You have a job, so I guess I gotta be the stay-at-home dad.
I was flabbergasted by Kenny's words, forgetting my anger. It's good that he wants to take on child-rearing, but he seems intent on leeching off of me. Moreover, it appears Kenny mistakenly thought that grand piano was mine. I confronted Kenny, who had unknowingly sold the grand piano and splurged with the money, with the words, "My condolences." Huh? What do you mean by that? With Kenny responding in a dumbfounded voice, I explained the details about the grand piano.
That piano originally belonged to my grandfather, who bought it for my brother. So, the current owner is still my brother.
Oh, is that so? You scared me there. It'll be fine if I just apologize to your brother later, right? Kenny seemed to lack any guilt about selling someone else's belongings. Well, Kenny has only met my brother at our wedding, so it's understandable he's unaware of my brother's intimidating nature. My brother works as a piano teacher. Ever since he was a child, he loved the piano. He pleaded with our grandfather to buy that specific piano. Though currently, there isn't space in his house for it, which is why it's at our parents'. Yet, he's still the owner. While working at a piano school, he has also expressed his wish to start his own school, using that very piano. Piano means more to him than anything else. I can only imagine what kind of punishment he would impose on Kenny after hearing that it was sold without permission. By the way, my brother has a strong personality and hates dishonesty. As I continued explaining, Kenny remained silent throughout.
Get it? When he finds out you sold his cherished grand piano, mere compensation won't cut it. My brother's not just strong-willed, but he doesn't settle for compromises either. I wonder what kind of punishment awaits you.
With my warning, the phone abruptly hung up. He's probably feeling regretful and is now racking his brains. For now, I called my brother and told him everything about the phone call. Needless to say, he was livid. The next day, Kenny rushed home. Entering from the front door, his eyes widened seeing everyone in the living room.
What? What's going on? Why's everyone here?
I had timed it so that the whole family would gather when Kenny returned home. Of course, my brother and his wife Catherine were there too. With a menacing look, my brother said,
"Kenny, I heard everything from Rachel. What were you thinking? Selling someone else's property, especially something that valuable, without consulting the family?"
Kenny, visibly nervous, tried to justify himself.
I was just trying to help with the chores around the house out of boredom. When I saw the old, large grand piano, I thought no one was using it anymore.
So you decided to sell it?
Yes, I mean, it seemed like a waste just to leave it there.
My brother, with a stern expression, asked.
Really? That piano was special, imported by our grandfather from a top European manufacturer. Where's the money from the sale?
As expected, my brother is quite the actor. Everyone probably knows that Kenny blew all his money on an overseas trip, but he's trying to make him confess it in front of everyone. Kenny must be desperately thinking of an excuse. He doesn't respond immediately and seems lost in thought. The sales money, yeah. It hasn't come in yet. In a flustered manner, Kenny tried to make an excuse, but my brother's anger finally erupted.
You're lying. Just how rotten are you? For starters, what's with those souvenirs from Europe in that huge suitcase?
Kenny acted as if he'd been struck by lightning, closing his eyes and shrinking back.
I'm sorry. I used up all the money.
Hearing Kenny's words, all the relatives began murmuring. Everyone knows the value of that grand piano. Everyone was shocked that he could spend $200,000 on just one overseas trip. My brother, looking down at Kenny, lifted his chin with his hand, making eye contact and said,
I think you already know from Rachel, but that piano was mine. Now that it's gone, you're gonna pay back every single penny. If you can't, I'm gonna sue you for theft. You okay with that?
My brother was confronting Kenny with immense intensity. He almost seemed like a mob boss. Normally, this would just be a family dispute, not something to sue over. But my brother is probably intimidating Kenny, who's clueless about the law. Just as my brother expected, Kenny lost his voice and started sweating profusely. Then, with a frightened voice, he looked at me.
Rachel, please, help me.
He pleaded in such a pitiful voice. What does he expect me to do?
I have nothing to do with this. It's all you're doing.
When I shot him down, Kenny began saying something ridiculous.
Don't be so cold. I took care of your mom while you were pregnant. I just thought of the trip as a reward for myself after taking care of her. Let's just say we both decided to sell the piano. That way, since we're siblings, it won't be theft, right?
What? I was so dumbfounded, I couldn't close my open mouth. The one who came to my rescue was Catherine.
Enough is enough. Didn't you tell Rachel not to come for caregiving? You even told me you thought I was just after the inheritance and tried to drive me away. What? Kenny, did you say such awful things to my wife too?
Yes. I didn't want to worry you, so I kept quiet. But this man must have been plotting to secretly sell the piano without letting Rachel and me get close to the family home. Catherine's words made sense to me. Recalling that Kenny didn't let me come close to the family home when he said he'd take care of our parents alone, I came to the same conclusion. My brother's anger peaked again.
Listen up. The reason my wife took care of Mom was because she didn't want to go to a facility. My wife had experience caring for her own mother, so she kindly agreed to do it for mine. Money is a later issue. First, apologize to my wife right here, right now.
While being grabbed by the collar by my brother, Kenny, with tears in his eyes, knelt down in front of Catherine. I'm so sorry, Catherine. Though Kenny apologized for his insulting behavior towards Catherine, all the relatives looked at him with cold eyes. Then, one of the relatives shouted at Kenny.
You better pay back the money from the piano sale as soon as possible. We can't have a criminal in the family. It'll tarnish the Schneider's name.
Kenny, misunderstanding again, made another odd remark. Right? We can't have a criminal in the family, right, bro? So, let's keep things calm. We'll save money together as a couple and pay back little by little. At Kenny's nonsensical interpretation, even my uncle was left speechless, not knowing how to respond. I felt that no matter what was said, it wouldn't resolve anything. So, I decided to fetch something from my room. Ever since the incident on the phone when Kenny was talking with a friend, I've had the business card of a divorce lawyer ready. Kenny, call this number. I want a relationship to be over. From now on, let's communicate through lawyers. When Kenny saw the business card I thrust at him, his face turned pale. Why? We're about to have a baby, and yet, why are you doing this? At that moment, I told everyone present what Kenny had been talking about with his friend on the phone. Wait, you heard that? It was just a joke.
You think that excuse will fly? I've known from the start that you approached me for my inheritance.
Everyone around was giving Kenny a cold stare. Realizing that there was no way out, Kenny retorted with a defiant attitude.
Darn. I thought I was gonna get close to $9 million. After we got married, I researched how much your mother left you.
Everyone was shocked by this sudden change in Kenny, who had always seemed so gentle. Maybe I should have been suspicious of a man I met at a dating event who was 10 years younger. I thought we had married for love, but this hurt me deeply. From now on, Kenny would be a stranger to me and my brother, so naturally, he had to pay back the money from selling the grand piano. Kenny broke down, saying, "I can't do that." But all the relatives present would testify against him, so there was no escaping this. However, rest assured, I won't ask for child support. Really? Well, at least I'm grateful for that.
In return, Kenny, you'll have nothing to do with this child. This is my child alone. You can't even claim to be its father.
I firmly stated, with my hand on my belly.
So, I can't even see the child?
Of course not.
Someone who deceives others for money doesn't deserve to be a father.
Upon hearing this, Kenny looked devastated and collapsed. Since the divorce, Kenny had been living in poverty, working live-in jobs. One day, my phone rang, and it was Kenny. I didn't want to have anything to do with him, but he kept calling, so I reluctantly answered.
Rachel, please help me.
Kenny pleaded in a pitiful voice. He explained that the buyer of the grand piano he sold wanted to return it and get a refund. When Kenny sold the piano, he had said it was in pristine condition. However, there was a large engraving on the back made by my brother claiming ownership. Probably Kenny didn't check the back. He should have gone to a reputable piano buyer who would have checked it thoroughly. Kenny probably sold it through a shady dealer. He was likely lured in by tempting offers like completely free, and now he's facing the consequences. Kenny had to return $200,000 to the buyer. Considering what he owed my brother, it was a substantial amount. Later on, Kenny tried to file for bankruptcy, but my brother and I took legal action and stopped him. Now, Kenny is burdened with even more debt and works day and night doing manual labor. Eventually, the heirloom grand piano safely returned. Relieved, my brother put a strong lock on the room where the piano was kept. He even installed a security camera, being super cautious. "No one's gonna touch that piano till I start my piano lessons," said my brother, who hadn't changed a bit from when he was a kid, making me chuckle. My brother expressed his wish to start a piano school at our family home, so I decided to discuss sharing our mother's inheritance. Catherine, my brother's wife, had taken care of our mother, and I felt guilty about inheriting everything by myself. Thanks to my brother agreeing with my decision, it seems we'll continue to have a good relationship with his family in the future. And so, I was blessed with a long-awaited baby girl. I feel bad for the relatives who were hoping for an heir, but in today's age, I believe girls tend to cherish their mothers for a longer time. Besides, my mother, in fact, was an only daughter and took in a son-in-law, so if needed, my daughter can do the same. I became a single mom, but Catherine, who's already done with her parenting, is fully supporting me. Ever since I was taking care of my mom, I've truly been indebted to Catherine. My brother said he's gonna step in as a father figure for my daughter, and he's really excited about it. Also, my brother and Catherine have 2 adult daughters, and under his influence, who loves the piano, both became kindergarten teachers. Those nieces have also come to adore my daughter. I feel so fortunate to be supported by such a warm family. And with gratitude to those around me, I intend to live strong with my daughter.